you for the opportunity. Deputy Director General from the Department of Transport, Mr. Chris Tlabisa, the CEO of Road Freight Association, Mr. Gavin Kelly, officials of the Department of Transport that have joined us here, captains of the industry, esteemed delegates. Let me start by appreciating the fact that after my appointment as the Minister of Transport, having addressed this conferences and yourselves, I received quite a number of congratulatory messages, and I thank you for that. Many of them pledged support, and indeed, I ask for support from yourselves. And as Kelly has said, Gavin has said, I'm not in the road freight, but I'm expected to provide leadership. And indeed, I will do that through your support and advices that I will value very much. And I must indicate that I'm deeply grateful. And as politicians, let me say this, we prepare speeches so that when we are misquoted, we are able to say, but this is the speech that I delivered. Maybe one other thing I want really to appreciate from yourselves, when last year, on the 17th of July, I lost my children on that horrible road crash that took my son, who then was a civil engineer with a master's degree, his wife, who was a finance manager, and their 4 children, 13, 11, 8, and 5. I received a number of messages from you. I felt the warmth and I felt the belonging. And we actually, when addressing you in the past, had agreed that we say that as it is. When I feel that you're not doing what I expect, I say it. When you think that we're just messing you up, you say it. And that has been the relationship that over time we developed, because I think I've addressed RFA quite a number of times, and I've had meetings with your leadership, and therefore there has been that relationship that has actually been built over time. And even now, I want to believe that as you remain here and discussing some of the issues, you can actually say that woman minister, and I see some women here, that woman minister, if she wants to have a legacy on freight, this is what she can do within the time that is left for her as her legacy. I would be very happy if something like that was to happen, so that I say, this is my legacy. I only have up until the elections next year as the Minister of Transport. I value you very much as road freight, and therefore I'm deeply grateful for the invitation to address this important gathering on the occasion of the National Convention of the Road Freight Association of South Africa. Our Department of Transport, as well as our government, view the RFA as one of our critical stakeholders and partners in the delivery of a critical service to our nation, the region, and our continent. 2 days ago, we celebrated Africa Day, and that is why I'm dressed like this. And more importantly, the 60th anniversary of the establishment of the Organization of African Unity. We are indebted to the collective vision of our leaders, who recognized early that the success of the African continent rests on its ability to unite and work together. The fact that members of the RFA move goods and services to various parts of our beloved continent is a living testimony that indeed the vision of Africa working together is slowly being realized. Together with you, we owe a great deal of gratitude to those leaders of their foresight, which benefits all of us today. As it has been said, I think he said it, approximately 80% of freight is transported by road. And members of the RFA have over the years played a vital role in ensuring the movement of goods and services to their desired destinations. Our government and society have a special appreciation of the role played by the freight industry, particularly in support of livelihoods of our people. It is therefore important to realize that in working together, we can create social compacts for advancing our country's economic fortunes. and improve the quality of lives of our people. And in this regard, the President has actually ensured that we form that crisis committee where we'll be dealing with these issues. I'm part of that, as Gavin has indicated. It is predicted that economic development within emerging markets could change the world trade dynamic substantially by 2030. In support of this growing trend, the World Bank Logistics Index suggests that low and middle income economies could boost global trade by 15% just by improving logistic performance. In order to take full advantage of this trade revolution, the South African government, through its National Development Plan, has placed much emphasis on infrastructure development through strategic investment and private sector participation. The success of trade within our borders and beyond is dependent on a safe, reliable, efficient, and dependable transport system. Additionally, our transport system should be well planned and sufficiently integrated to allow for ease of access and should promote integration amongst the various modes. For instance, the transition of goods from shipping lines and our ports through our roads to points of destination should be well managed and be as seamless and efficient as possible. Our transport system must be reliable, trustworthy, and provide an assurance to our trade partners that they can be relied upon. The Department of Transport is acutely aware of this important task and is cognizant of the role it must play in creating an enabling environment for these ideas to be realized. We are equally reviewing the National Land Transport Act with the primary aim of structuring the Republic's land transport systems into one uniform system with a centralized database. This includes prescribed national principles, requirements, guidelines, frameworks, and national norms and standards that must be applied uniformly in the Republic's provinces and local authorities. I believe that you participated in the processing of this bill, and of course, it is still in Parliament. I want to believe that it will soon be going to the National Council of Provinces. If you have not participated, I invite you to do so at that level. The NLTA also addresses additional matters contemplated in Section 146 of the Constitution and aims at consolidating all land transport functions so that they can be located in the appropriate spheres of government. In South Africa, contrary to international best practice, road is the only mode of transport that is not adequately regulated as a basic principle of transport regulation, and there's no effective regulation of road transport operators as business entities. The Department of Transport, together with the Road Traffic Management Corporation, RTMC, is in the process of developing the National Operators Registration System, the purpose of which is to regulate the road freight sector as the only deregulated freight transport mode to date since 1988. This is necessary in order to achieve quality regulated competition, enhance the enforcement processes, and encourage voluntary compliance. You will definitely be consulted in this regard, if you have not already been consulted. Ladies and gentlemen, while road freight delivery has significant advantages, the great number of freight vehicles on the road contributes to overloading and the subsequent significant deterioration of the road network and traffic congestion, as it has also been alluded to by Gavin. This has resulted in the development and formulation of freight road to rail migration plan, the primary aim of which is to rebalance the road freight, rail freight split in an attempt to create a more appropriate market share and to reduce the number of heavy trucks on the roads to decrease overloading on the road network. This, of course, is said, but I don't believe that it's going to be like that. If you look at the number of trucks on the N3 alone, if we can have Durban Port functioning effectively and efficiently, then you're not going to decrease the number of trucks. even if you introduce a well-working freight rail. But what cannot happen, and as far as I'm concerned, is to do nothing today about the movement of some cargo or freight from road to rail. That road, particularly the Durban-Johannesburg corridor, can no longer carry the number of trucks. Almost every day on that road, there is a truck that is overturning. Almost every day. You thank God that it's just the truck and there aren't cars that probably got onto that to the extent of causing accidents. So it's something that we need to change. And probably as I continue with my speech, I will explain what I have in my mind, which you can discuss and see if it's just a dream or not a dream. The implications is a reduction in overall transport and logistic cost and externalities. A major factor determining the need for restructuring of the freight transport sector is the urgent requirement for extensive recapitalization and investment in transportation infrastructure and equipment in order to reduce the unsatisfied demand that has given rise to intermodal distortion of the transport of bulk commodities. The President announced that soon Transnet, and in particular Transnet Freight Rail, will be returned to the Department of Transport. I want to believe that this is going to happen at the beginning of the 7th administration, where government can actually be configured. To us as a sector, this means we can no longer delay the implementation of the National Rail Policy. Hence, we have already commenced with the drafting of the National Rail Master Plan 2050, which will further assist in the identification of the network constraints, opportunities, including infrastructure improvements and rail network expansions required to assist in creating a conducive environment for private and public sector participation. And we believe that the National Rail Policy aspects that are implementable and implementable now need to be implemented as a matter of agency. For integrated intermodal freight movement, it is important that we hold freight intermodal trade-off discussions on the best way on how to collectively and collaboratively accelerate this shift without the detriment to another sector within the freight trade value chain. Just last week, I had a discussion with ARIA, the African Rail Industry Association, and discussed the same with them. They are preparing for a dialogue which I requested we hold, and in this regard, where they will present their proposals on the way forward. It will be beneficial to have the RFA represented when we have these critical discussions. They told me when I interacted with them to say, we hear what you are saying, Madam Minister, but we are over-regulated as a country. And I said to them, this is a complaint. Give me the solutions. Identify those regulations that make it impossible for you to work, particularly if it is regulations, because regulations are signed off by the minister. They don't have to go to parliament. So if you feel that there are regulations that make it difficult for you to do your work, identify them. We'll come and see it and see whether those cannot be amended. I said to them, going forward, if indeed we prepare for the transfer of Transnet to the Department of Transport, we will not wait until it happens. We need to start preparing for that now. And I'm calling upon you to start doing that as well. As far as I'm concerned, something has said, at some stage, our ports worked. Our rail, I don't know whether I'm correct there, but I think possibly maybe, at some stage they may have worked. Where are the people that made our ports work? And as far as I'm concerned, it's time that we get all those people and we form that team and we identify younger people who we're going to send to ports of the world that are working efficiently, but also who are going to learn from those that make it possible for our Durban port to be rated as the busiest in the continent. They are in South Africa, I want to believe, and they can help us. And I'm calling upon yourselves to maybe begin to think as to where is so-and-so, where was he? He might be 80 years old. He might be whatever years old. But I think they still have that investment that went into them when they were running our ports effectively and efficiently. And therefore, also in my own view, I think it's time that we begin to identify young people with qualifications but without experience to ensure that they pair and work together with those people. The rail policy calls on the vertical separation of infrastructure ownership and operators. I think in South Africa, this is a model that is working relatively better than a situation where you have one entity being both the landlord in terms of infrastructure as well as the operator. I just want to make an example. We have AXA in the transport sector. AXA owns our airport infrastructure, but it is not an operator. So it allows operators, whether private or government or state-owned, to operate. They don't go to AXA to apply. They go elsewhere to the councils, international and domestic airline councils, to apply. Then they get the operating licenses. Then they go to AXA to say, give us the slot, we want to fly to George, we want to fly to wherever. And for me, that seems to be a model that is working. We have a SANRAL in the road space. It is responsible for the infrastructure, but it is not the operator. You go elsewhere and apply for operations as truckers and so on. Then you come to road and say, I'm operating between, if that is the case. Whether you are state-owned truck or you are private-owned trucking person, you do it. So there is separation of that. What I've seen not working is when you have Transnet being the landlord when it comes to freight rail, owning the freight, the infrastructure of rail, but at the same time being the operator, and therefore being the monopoly. So when they fail as the landlord and fail as the operators, then we have no rail, freight rail. And that is what I think we need to change. I've shared this with the president. I've said, President, we probably can go elsewhere in the world. We're going to have these work streams, but I think we do have a relatively working model in South Africa. Let's separate. But if we also look at the bill that is before Parliament on transport economic regulator, it actually is introducing what I'm saying, because it brings two things. One, the access, which is about operating licenses. And it actually talks also on the cost, to say it's no longer going to be SANRAL that tells us as to how much must we pay at their toll plazas, as well and this and that. So it actually is introducing this. Can we move with speed? Yes. Is it a model that we can look at and perfect? For me, it's something else. And I'm saying this to you so that as you engage, you begin to say, if we want to introduce a model that is going to work in the rail sector, where both state-owned but private sector-owned trains can run, how can this be done so that it is done properly? What are the things that we need to change immediately? For now, the corridor between Durban, the rail corridor between Durban, I'm told, they tell me that as a matter of fact, you can still run, even in its current shape and whatever condition. but you can still run up to about 20 to 30 trains. We're running something like 3 to 5 per day. And that for me is a problem. And that is why, and for me, the configuration of government is such that what actually make us feel very bad about everything is actually happening elsewhere. So what we are saying, we appreciate what the president announced, that we're going to have this in the Department of Transport, but it's going to actually lead to a very big Department of Transport. But I think that will work much better, so that when we feel that we can no longer have the N3 that has nothing, not less than 9,500 trains per day, trucks per day, we're able then to say, let's move them and move some cargo from road to rail. I don't believe that we should be having coal on our roads, honestly. If you look at the N2 from MLO to Richards Bay, it's a nightmare. It happens only in South Africa that coal will be transported like that. And I think it's something that we can agree to change, and to change as soon as possible. And I'm here saying, I'm begging you to begin to say, these are the challenges, but you don't end there. Then you say, we think the solutions are 1, 2, 3. And from this convention, you can then say, we have agreed on this. This is what you're going to take to the minister, Gavin. Call her within a week so that you can sit and communicate our proposals, so that when we go to that meeting that he referred to with the president, we already have had some agreement as the transport sector, so that we don't go to those extremes to begin to debate and to disagree. And I think we can disagree on the side. When we go there, we've agreed on a number of things, and that is my request from yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, in our budget speech last week, the Department of Transport identified certain priorities for our department for the current financial year. These priorities demonstrate our commitment to invest in our transport infrastructure and systems towards a safe, efficient, and reliable transport system we spoke about earlier. We have committed over 40 billion rand to the construction, upgrading, and maintenance of our national and provincial road networks. A significant amount of investment will go towards refurbishment, rehabilitation, eradication of potholes in provincial and municipal roads. Road infrastructure damaged by floods is also being prioritized. SANRAL will play a leading role in assisting the department, working with provinces and municipalities to successfully implement these programs. Given the carnage on our roads, road safety will be a major focus of our transport family, underpinned by a strong 24-hour law enforcement presence in our roads. Additional law enforcement officers have been recently appointed to add impetus to our drive for safer roads. These are among proposed interventions to be implemented in this financial year. The Road Traffic Management Corporation is receiving additional resources and support to ensure that we are successful. Our commitment is unwavering, and we are determined to ensure that these are achieved. We will also be approaching you for you as private sector to adopt some roads because indeed your trucks are not helping us. It doesn't matter how much Mpumalanga repair the road between Carolina, those who come from Mpumalanga, Carolina and Brayton. It is repaired today, the following is gone, because it was never meant for the number of trucks that are using that road today. So you can actually say to us, no, Minister, we're going to adopt that road. And of course, some of you have actually indicated that, but of course you put some question, some conditions. Others are saying who will be liable in an event there's an accident. I think that will be an easy answer to give, because it remains a government or a public, not a government, a public road. So definitely government will be reliable in such an event. But we really will be coming to you to say, are there roads that you think you can adopt and ensure that they are properly maintained, because we can't keep up with the pace. around the area of N2. And as he indicated, the young man here indicated that people throw stones at your trucks, which is unfortunate. And therefore the drivers decide to take other roads that are never meant for trucks. And within a day, those roads are just gone. And we definitely are not saying that you are responsible. I'm just talking to you. Otherwise, I think the maintenance of our road infrastructure has not been that good for many reasons, of course. We must inform the industry that the freight data bank has since been completed and is available to provide a national overview of freight movement on the identified 16 freight corridors across the 4 modes of transport. The freight data bank is available to all industry stakeholders. The Department of Transport, working with other institutions like the Trans-Kalahari Corridor and some of our agencies, have developed a truck stop discussion document and are in the process of developing a truck stop framework to deal with coordination of truck resting facilities, safety, trucker wellness, and the enforcement of truck drivers' working hours and conditions as per the Department of Labor regulations. Our entities, the CBRTA and the RTMC, are working closely with the Department of Labor and other stakeholders on these initiatives. And I want to believe that the companies that are here, none of you employ foreign nationals only. I hope so, because it's against the law. And the people of South Africa, who many are unemployed, come to us, and your drivers are also telling us these things. And I want to believe that these are the matters that we can address and correct as soon as possible. Upon establishment, these truck stops will provide much desired services to truck drivers as well as your operators. The success of the continuous improvement to our transport system will rely heavily on our ability to modernize our processes through technological investment. Our partnership with entities like the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research will assist us to explore relevant technologies for our ambitions. Private sector companies have also been at the center of various innovations, which in our view will help accelerate our efforts. These demonstrate an encouraging scenario of the private sector's contribution to innovation and stressing the need for government and private sector to work together with the advancements of our society. Government continues with its effort to build an enabling environment for the freight industry to thrive and operate as efficiently as possible. Now, the issue is that as we do that, it's you who are the recipients of that enabling environment. So it's you who must tell us whether indeed the environment that we think we're creating for you is conducive. If you think it is not, you tell us as to what is therefore a conducive environment and how can we achieve that. My approach is an approach that says, if you tell us about the challenge, it must be because that is you creating a problem statement, but for us to understand the solution. But not just a problem statement, thank you very much, because then you leave it upon me to then decide the solution. And what I can think is your solution may actually be your frustration. And that is why I'm saying I'm more than willing, because it's very correct. I said to the President, people talk about the growing economy, and it's a theory somewhere that is learned in a class. With us in transport, the truckers physically and tangibly move economy. You see the economy being moved. See, you can touch a truck, you can touch things inside the truck. That is the economy that they talk about. And when they stop, for whatever reasons, it is the economy that is physically and practically stopped. So for us in the sector, the economy is not what you just learn in the classroom, which is important for you to know, but is exactly what you see with your naked eyes. And that is why you are important in South Africa. And that is why we are here to say we are your partners. Let me tell you, I have been a deputy minister for quite some time, but the position of a minister is very powerful. It is just a stroke of a signature. You sell everybody and you destroy everybody. I don't want to do that. I simply don't want to do that. And that is why I will be consulting from time to time with yourselves, with the hope, and the hope that whatever advices you are going to give will be honest advices for the good of South Africa. And I'm pleading with you on that one, so that we can actually move South Africa forward. Firstly, we're all aware that government, through our department and other relevant ones, put together a plan with the freight industry aimed at establishing both a common platform and a common agenda to deal with emerging challenges. This plan is being implemented despite some challenges, and I think you are aware of that. Secondly, in the financial year 2021-2022, South Africa moved about 380 billion rand worth of exports to the SADC region and received about 140 billion rand of imports through the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency. We continue to regulate the movement of freight across our borders. Last year, the agency migrated to an online system for issuing operator permits, making it easy for operators to access permits, thus improving the ease of doing business. The number of permits issued has since increased, and additional tools are being developed to be launched in this current financial year. Thirdly, through various bilateral agreements and joint committees, several bottlenecks are being resolved to further improve the movement of goods and services across our borders. The department is working hard to update and finalize most of these agreements. The relations with our regional partners and sister countries are vital to our economic growth and sustainability and have to be prioritized. Fourth, as part of our efforts to contribute to an improved regulatory regime, efforts are being made to transition to quality regulation or regulating. This will assist our sector to have a better sense of who is on the roads, the quality of their vehicles and drivers. This will further improve safety on our roads. Some of the private sector initiatives in this regard have also been brought to our attention, and all these initiatives should be complemented at all times. Cabinet also approved the road freight strategy in 2017, the purpose of which is to address the issues which have currently negative impacts on the efficiency of the road freight sector. The intention of the road freight strategy is to create an integrated regulatory and operational framework which will enable South Africa to achieve best international standards of road freight operations. This is essential for the future logistic support of industrial growth, road safety, limitations of externalities, and the creation of opportunities for employment. Ladies and gentlemen, we recognize that the world is not static. We are aware of the emerging global debates about decarbonization and recognize that as a country and citizens, we have to contribute to the efforts of managing climate change. The transport sector is regarded as one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, and the road sector being the worst. And I just must indicate that these discussions are happening everywhere. You go to IMO, International Maritime Organizations, there are discussions. You go to International Civil Aviation, ICAO, there are discussions. You go elsewhere. We participate in this as South Africa, taking into account the positive and the negative impacts some of the decisions can have to our country, taking into account the fact that we are located far from our trading partners. The issue of credits for emitting airlines that you can buy and shipping companies, we believe that if we're not closer to that, and I'm just mentioning it, might actually isolate South Africa. Because if you emit so much and you can actually buy credits, you would definitely not want to take the route such as ours, which has got stormy waters, and therefore as a vessel you emit more, and therefore you pay more. as you buy the credits. So these are the discussions that are happening at some other international bodies. And we believe that as South Africa, we need to participate, and we're trying our level best to do just that. Ladies and gentlemen, in March this year, the Ministers of Transport of the tripartite met. This included SADC region, EAC, and COMESA to consider the long outstanding model laws that are seeking to harmonize our regions. These are still under consideration, but what remains encouraging is that these are now being considered for adoption after long delays. We will continue to work with the SADC in support of our region and to ensure that we contribute to the discourse about the improvement of regional systems, which were envisaged to improve the ease of doing business in the region beyond. So I'm saying they are about to be adopted. And I think it's important that before they are adopted, you also make your own inputs. Because once adopted, then they will also apply to your good selves. Transformation remains one of the pillars of our department and our government by extension. In our view, your CEO says you are transformed. You have SMMEs and so on, but we think we can do better than what you are doing, given the reality that there are still very few players that come from the previously disadvantaged communities. I think you can do better in that one. If you think you have done better, then it means you have not marketed that to the extent that we know about it. And therefore, the perception is still that this is one sector that is not that transformed. Government continues to invest in various efforts to improve the freight sector's fortunes, like some of the initiatives outlined above, but this ought to be complemented by a commitment by the industry to do more for transformation. It is essential that the country sees an industry that is working with government to ensure that there is better transformation. And it is true that just last week, I think 2 weeks ago, we launched the Integrated Transport Sector BBEE Council, tasked with the responsibility to develop transport sector codes to address some of the glaring transformation challenges in the transport sector, and of course, in our case, in the freight sector as well. I call on all of you gathered here to ensure that this is prioritized and we see the much desired impact within this industry. As I conclude, I also want to extend an invitation to the Road Freight Association to join us as partners in addressing the intractable challenges that constrain the logistics sector, from making a meaningful contribution to economic recovery and growth. We must have a robust and no-holds-barred conversations on the policy trajectory that will enable us to increase the contribution of the transport sector to the country's GDP. I really would want to wish you well in your deliberations, and I'm looking forward to innovative ideas that will help us move the needle in growing the economy. I want to believe that as you close this convention, you will be able to say, CEO and the management or the board, these are the matters that you must take to the minister for her implementation or consideration. And this is what we shall be doing. And for that, I will appreciate it very much. The success of the transport sector lies in all of us as a collective. Whether we agree or not, the socio-economic fate of our country is in our hands. As the heartbeat, I told the president, and he didn't believe it. And I said, as the Department of Transport, we are the heartbeat. And as the transport sector, we are the heartbeat of South Africa's economic growth and social development. And I said to the president, a person can be declared brain dead, but until the heart stops, that person is not dead. So the brain can die, but if the heart continues to pump and to beat, that person is not dead. Until such time that the heart stops, then it's only then that the person is said to be dead. This is how important we are in the transport sector. We keep South Africa moving and we grow the economy of South Africa. I thank you very much.
All right. We do have questions for you, Madam Minister. Minister, the first question relates to the one that I had in mind as you were talking. And yesterday, the front page of the Business Day quoted the CEO of Astral, one of our largest chicken producers, who says they used to move 95% of their raw materials via rail. They're now doing so via road at 4 times the cost. They went on at length to quote CEOs from Ford, South Africa, from BMW, the logistics issues that we face, but also around security, that we know some of the areas that the vandals target. What are we doing about that? And that's my question, and it relates to the first I'm going to pose you from our delegates, which says non-compliance is a big threat to the road industry as load shedding and civil unrest, but with law and compliance enforcement, it can be rectified. How and when will government do it? It's really the issue of security. What are we doing about that?
I think I've answered this question in my speech, but let me say it again. As of now, our freight rail, if I must be honest, it's close to being dysfunctional. And that is why we agree with the President when he says he wants Transnet, and in particular in this case, the freight rail, to be moved to transport. And for me, it says we have got then to come up with a model that is going to work. A model that is going to allow the state-owned freight trains to run, but the private sector freight trains to run. So that if you have got locomotives, if I have trains and I can run them, you've got companies in South Africa that can do that. They're able to operate them. In so doing, then we'll be able to move exactly from road to rail. So for us, for now, the reasons why you're going to have chickens on the road, and when there's blockage, they rot, for whatever reason, and they don't reach their destination, is because the rail is not working. We would definitely want to move to ensure that the rail is working. And as the Department of Transport, this is more urgent, probably not only for the private sector only. They have got their own issues, but we've got our own issues. And the problem for now is the manner in which government is configured. Because when you talk about freight rail, it's not in the Department of Transport. So what is our priorities may necessarily not be the priority of DPE, may necessarily not be the priority of Transnet. I can go on and on and on. I sat in the National Ports Consultative Committee, and we'll discuss issues and we'll agree. But we are only a policy department and not the shareholding department. So transport, we will say this is the priority. Let's dip in, for instance, let's attend to the East London port so that Mercedes-Benz does not have to move its Mercedes from East London to another port and incur unnecessary transport logistic cost. We attend to that port. But you're depending on the shareholding department and the Transnet group. That depends on whether it sees that as a priority. So you've got this element of government, how the government is configured, which I believe if it is done differently, it might help. But of course, it will lead to a very big Department of Transport, with the Transnet coming to the Department of Transport.
All right. What is the appetite from the Department of Transport to sell ports to the private sector? It's been done with great success elsewhere in the world.
I've never thought about that. I've never thought about that, but it can also be done differently. You have got, like I made the example, you have got AXA owning our airports, the infrastructure of our airports, and operators operating. And I think it's something that can actually be discussed. The model for now, I've not thought about it. So it's something that can actually be discussed.
Fair enough. Your view on the reduction of carbon emissions versus the tension of developing our economy. This is the problem of emerging markets. Where's that balance for you?
In the transport sector, we're contributing about 10% of carbon emissions. And I'm happy that some of the trucking manufacturers are already manufacturing electric cars. We're not there yet. We're not like countries such as Germany or European countries. The deputy minister is attending the International Transport Forum, and he actually called to say some of the countries are now manufacturing electric cars and electric cars only. We're not there yet, but I think we're moving towards that, and I think it's important that we do that as a country. One thing that I think it is a problem for the SADC region is the dumping of cars by the developed world. I visited some of our neighboring countries, probably I may not mention them, but if you give me 80,000 rand, I can come back with 2 cars, but that are emitting big time.
Yeah.
And I think that is a problem, that the dumping of vehicles that the developed world do not want in our regions. And I think it's something that we need to look into as a region to say we shouldn't be the dumping area for those cars that are not required. But I think we're moving slowly, but towards achieving that. It's going to take time, but we're moving towards that. As we do that, we balance, as you have said, the fact that we don't lose jobs for our people, and we take them along with us, because many times, people create perceptions that do not exist. With the movement of freight from road to rail, there was this perception that it means that drivers are going to lose jobs. It's not going to happen, as a matter of fact. They will always drive those trucks, because if our Durban port is our Cape Town port, if our ports can work efficiently, those trucks will still be required. But also at the end of the rail, there will still be a need for a truck. So you'll always need a truck somewhere, at the beginning or at the end of the chain.
Minister, we thank you so much for your generosity and for spending time with us. I particularly want to commend you for being open and sharing your personal story of your loss. And it may not obviously be much comfort to you, but at least we all know you are invested in the most personal way in making our transport system more efficient. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.